Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August edition of our ARDC National Skills Forums. My name's Liz Stokes, and I'm going to be your host for today. We have an awesome bunch of presenters here to kick off a session about AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning approaches in training. I'm going to share my slides so you can see them. And look for my presenter notes. There they are. Right. So welcome. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today. For me, that is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I encourage you to share the lands from which you're joining us today in the chat, and would love to hear anything that you can share with us about that. In Wiradjuri language, I'd like to say Maran Naran, which is good morning. Oh, I'm a bit late. Okay. Maybe for some of you, it is still morning. So these forums, we record them and we will upload them to YouTube, usually on a CC BY license. We encourage you to turn your video on and use Zoom reactions as well. Questions can be asked by posting these into the Zoom chat. Okay, we are bound by a code of conduct for today's workshop. Workshop is a bit of a stretch perhaps for our forum, but I encourage you to workshop ideas. We are all trainers here. Why are we running these meetups? We wanted to be able to find a way for the trainer community across Australia to catch up between our annual skills summits and also host an open assembly of practitioners, trainers, having a public conversation and doing this monthly. So bring some visibility to the work that trainers do in this space. What you can expect is that our purpose here is to facilitate knowledge exchange across the community, showcase digital research skills, development activities, and share resources and good practices across the sector. So today's topic on AI and machine learning, we have some excellent speakers, as I said. We have Kyle Hemming from the University of Auckland talking about how they have managed different audiences, designed different training for their audiences in AI and machine learning. We have Glenn Charlton, who is the lead data scientist at Intersect, who will be talking about their AI bootcamps, and Daria Vanichkina from the Sydney Informatics Hub, sharing with us some perspectives on training from a broader context. Okay, and just encourage people to keep your microphones on mute while we have our presenters. Okay, good, right. The reason that I've put this picture of a tiger chewing a soldier is because I found it recently when I was looking for an appropriately CC licensed image to introduce this topic, right? How are people training researchers in AI and machine learning? It's actually, it was a mechanical organ tiger made for Tipu Sultan, who had resisted the British East India Company. So this automaton, you crank a handle and first the soldier cries out and his arm moves. Don't eat me. And the tiger growls because there are low pipes in there. I thought this was interesting for two reasons, because I think for a lot of us, we worry, and fair enough, we worry that AI and machine learning means that the machines are coming and they might jump up and bite us. Also, thinking about biting and, the hand that feeds us, I wanted to make an allusion into the poetics of taming versus training, and perhaps a sly hint at docile subjects and how they support our work and what we intend out of the encouragement of using these technologies. So, with that, I also need to acknowledge that hilariously, this image of the tiger and the soldier is actually from the Victoria and Albert Museum. They have shared it on a CC BY attribution share alike license, which is hilarious since they stole the automaton from Tipu Sultan in the first place. Anyhow, just so we're ready to get stuck into all the weird corners, uncomfortable and interesting corners of this space, I wanted to flag that there. Okay, so let us crack on with our forum. Can you give me a hand or use a reaction in the chat, or even in the chat, to let me know that you're all on board with what I've outlined so far? Good, great, cool. Well, I can see some people using the chat, so that's good. All right, so our first speaker is Kyle Henning, and I'm going to keep sharing my screen, but invite him onto the stage to talk to us about responsible AI training for researchers. We'll run our 3 invited speakers first. I'll ask them a couple of questions after each talk, but then we'll get into the big all-in Q&A after that, roughly at about probably 20 minutes to the hour. So let's see how we go.
Thanks, Liz. I'll finger gun for slide changes.
So yes, I'll do that.
Cool. Kia ora koutou team, beaming in from across the ditch, Aotearoa, the lands of the Ngāti Whātua iwi. As you can see in the background, that's a bit of Auckland, 50 volcanoes, lots of hills, not great cycling. Today, I want to chat about what I've been up to last year at the University of Auckland, which is in a mission to develop workshops targeted at AI literacy. So what I want you to get out of this is to understand what a large university, we have them in New Zealand, is how it's strategically thinking about training up researchers, kinds of things we're doing, and I'm thinking about, and then importantly, what the gaps are, what our audience thinking about, where we might go next, and highlighting some of their concerns. What kind of themes are we seeing from researchers around what they need from universities in order to get a handle on researching in AI and also supervising students. I tried to, we'll do this in a speed time. I've got animation, it's cool. So the first part is researchers are using AI. There's graphs of just exponential uptake in this area. There's 3 things that AI can really help researchers with, which is increasing their domain knowledge in the area, improving their critical thinking around understanding the nuances in their field, and then generating outputs that are better, faster, stronger. So 3 things that AI can take away from people, which is removing their domain knowledge, giving them stuff, taking away their critical thinking skills, and then doing outputs for them. So there's a real need for AI literacy. And so university embarked on responsible AI as a foundation to think about enabling researchers to specifically across the entire university to take this thing of responsible AI. What is to do this safely? There's going to be 3 points on there, Liz. Keep going. And one more. Sorry for. Oh, so we had 3 ideas around these workshops, which was what is the university up to, and telling people what the principles, policies, and laws around that involve AI include. The thing I'll say is that there's no new policies at Auckland University. There's existing policies which AI has been shoehorned into, which is met with varying levels of usefulness and frustration. Then around the tools themselves, they hallucinate, and then do it. What considerations are for tools? For example, how big models are. Do you actually need to do this for a GPU? Stuff like that. Oh, so what did this look like? In 2025, Auckland University ran 5 types of workshops. I've listed there, and across multiple times. Lots of stakeholder engagement and getting speed. At a high level, what this looked like is a kind of a generic one. What is responsible AI in terms of policies for that. Also looked at some specific tools and use cases, like what's transcription and literature reviews using AI. So New Zealand has a ResBaz we ran in July, which I ran a prompt engineering workshop, which had 400 people sign up for, which for New Zealand is like 2/3 of our population. The literature reviews also had, I think, 800 people sign up. So huge need for stuff, for this kind of AI stuff. People are really, at this stage, we're kind of treating from the ground floor, really. This will look different in 5 years when people come up to more native users of it. But at this stage, a lot of people haven't ever used it before. So it's been a real interesting look at the needs of different people who are really familiar with it versus not. But we have really been at that basics level. And what we want to do, for example, is look at how to embed large language models into research. That's still in development because it is a bit more advanced. And we ran that on top of our normal everyday workshops, or normal ones, which is the carpentries in machine learning and deep learning. So I just press it until all the slides, all the points are in. Sorry, Liz, thank you. So what do we get up to? People want to understand and use AI, but they're coming from a real general point of view. And so, background which is quite naive to it, not from a judgmental point of view, but it's very new. But there's a lot of distrust and frustration out there in terms of people being quite worried about where their data goes, what the policy implications are. Are they, if they tell their students to use these tools, are they removing critical thinking as a skill that students get out of their PhDs? Are these, so like really valid questions, but not necessarily what you might tackle in a carpentries workshop, for instance, on a large language model. People not necessarily aren't there yet. And so one thing I was trying to promote is AI assisted research. And I guess as a training community, that's where you want to get to is well, how do you embed AI in training? But to be honest with you, we're not quite there yet in terms of, we're thinking about those things, but it was a real big literacy campaign. And I think that's going to be there for a couple of more years, at least until the new cohort of PhDs who have used this in their masters or undergrad are coming through. The institutions are more mature and tools they have accessible. So to wrap up, we're figuring out more training in AI, for example, using LLMs for analysis. There's a lot of open questions. Just tap that one more time, Liz. Is there a little, there we go. Talking about a couple of these, eResearch Australia, open questions, but key takeaways is, we're really just hitting the ground floor with this, and we've got a lot of engagement so far and people being interested in it. We need to do that before we actually look at putting AI in research. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much, Kyle. All right. That was really interesting. I really want to get stuck into a lot more detail than what you have given an awesome overview of. However, the first thing that I'd really like to ask you straight away is how we had one of these questions come in as people registered, um, and they asked how to use AI responsibly to augment a PhD thesis without having the authenticity of your writing questioned. I wonder if some of your experiences could lead you to an answer on that.
Mm. So I sus each university might be different, but I suspect we might be in similar boats where there's existing policies on how a written piece of work, an article, or a thesis can be managed by third parties coming in, might pay an editor, for instance. University of Auckland has decided that that policy AI is just a third party, so it has the same laws as the editor, which means yeah, there's some problems with this. So on the one hand, you can the university using this policy to say, hey, the student's cheating. We can use this as this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really, but then if you go, okay, well, I want to do this properly. Let's try and use AI as a third party. Then it's actually impossible to use. For example, I suspect there's some other universities. There might be nuances, but you know, you, the editor can't change the written work themselves. They have to just suggest comments, basically. If you've used an AI tool, does it suggest comments? No, it'll just rewrite the whole thing. So in practical terms, some of these tools aren't mature enough to use for research. And if you did want to use it to supplement your research, it's just going to rewrite it for you and maybe take away that critical thinking, or it's not your work. So I think people need to really consider and sit down in their particular use case and with their supervisor in the domain about what is useful for you, but you have to create it yourself. And that might be using Notebook LLM, for example, which you can upload documents into, and then you can query it. So you could put in a paper and say, tell me about the point of this paper. And that could give you ideas, but really separating the two, the AI and your own. And that's really tricky, but that's, I think, needed.
Awesome. Thank you. It really makes me realize so I had a follow-up question about how do we make sure we guide trainees effectively to gain critical skills and build knowledge instead of eroding those skills and becoming overly reliant on shortcut tools. And I think you've already answered that by pointing to some of the no usage of notebooks and also having reflecting on what it is that you want to get out of engaging with these tools in the first place. Thanks, Kyle. That's really great. Okay, we'll come back to you later. For now, we're going to move on to our esteemed guest, Glenn Charlton. Move us along and bring Glenn up to the plate because now we're playing baseball metaphorically.
Thanks, Liz. I was never very good at baseball, but I'll give this a go anyway. Um, yeah, so I'm coming to you from Intersect and more specifically our Advanced Analytics and AI team. And this year, during this year, we've launched a new program called AI Training Bootcamps. Next slide, please, Liz. And what this was to do was to fit in a layer of support amongst what we currently deliver to our as research services to our members, as well as the other organizations that we work with. So I guess traditionally, if we went back 3 years before the 3i team, we offered training and DRA support for researchers. So our introductory training, which I used to help deliver, introduces coding topics and other softwares to researchers within our membership, and is really a core component of what the Intersect membership is all about. And then the DRA support is our wonderful team of DRAs who are located at each of our member institutions, and they help researchers almost with kind of like post-training support as well as other things to help them get used to using all of these digital tools. And then we had data science as a service, so that's my team's core business, and that is where we get in and help with hands-on support, full end-to-end support for researchers within their data-intensive research projects. But there was a bit of a gap here between, what we could offer from DRA support and data science as a service. And so we launched our AI training bootcamps, which take what you're learning in training to another level. So it's across an 8-week period, and we're delving very deeply into a specific AI topic. So this is not about how to use AI, as in how to use ChatGPT. This would be how to, for instance, make your own ChatGPT model, develop your own large language model. And we also have computer vision, machine learning operations, and reinforcement learning topics as well. Next slide, please, Liz. So how did we go about this? So we've launched this. It's got 10 half days across the 8-week period and a research project which is supported by our team. So we split the participants into three groups. Normally there's 12 participants in a boot camp. And they work on a project that we've curated, and we support them through that. And we find our current feedback from our early bootcamp attendees is this is really helpful in translating what they're learning into their own research once they leave the bootcamp. There's also things like weekly resources, quizzes to test your knowledge. And one of the most important things is it's delivered by our expert data scientists in that field. Now, because they start to delve very deeply into complex problems, we've found our data science experts who are hands-on doing research with our researchers as data scientists, as a service day to day. They're really well placed to deliver this content. And so what is the content? So as I said, there's generative AI or large language models where we delve into some of the concepts like natural language processing, developing your own model, and also talk about, the limitations and the ethical considerations around using these tools, the fundamentals of computer vision and image processing within our computer vision course, learning about building convolutional neural networks, object detection, segmentation, generative models, and then how to interpret and evaluate the models that you're developing. Our machine learning operations course is about learning to conduct proper machine learning operations. And ML Flow, which is what we use as the basis for this, is a great way of managing both your model development as well as the deployment of your models once you've developed them. And so we give the researchers the ability to use a very good open source tool for this service, which then helps them to apply this to probably any of the other topics that we cover in the other boot camps. And our final boot camp is on reinforcement learning. So learning some of the fundamentals and how to apply these algorithms. We start to get into something which is on the newer side for reinforcement learning, which is neural networks in reinforcement learning, and then learn about policy-based methods and how to optimize performance. So that's kind of the overview of what we're doing. The whole idea about this is to empower researchers to learn to be able to apply AI within their own research. Next slide, please, Liz. So how have we been going? We are about to finish our third boot camp. So this is very new and new data. But so far, our attendees have been attending, which is great. So we've had 95% attendance across the boot camps that have been completed so far, and a net promoter score of 67, which is between -100 and 100. So 67 is above world standard. So we're very happy with that. And our researchers have indicated to us that their understanding of the AI topic that they're learning has increased by 40%. There's been some really good feedback talking about the content, the way it's delivered, and overall, I think we're very happy. So as I said, we're currently delivering our third boot camp. We've got a fourth boot camp starting next month, and hopefully more after that. And we think that this has kind of filled a gap in our training portfolio as Intersect to take those people from and researchers from that introductory level all the way through to becoming an expert in a specific AI topic that is specific to their research domain.
Thanks so much, Glenn.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love how your attendance rate is so incredibly high, which is perhaps surprising given that often long form training can be can be challenging to maintain that enthusiasm. So I'd like to ask you a question about a bit more in the kind of in the research applications and sort of discipline specific area around examples in practice. What are there some particular tools or AI apps that are currently being used in specific disciplines? I'm thinking of maybe something around social sciences or clinical health delivery or statistical analysis. What have your e-research analysts come across from their embedded experiences?
Yeah, so this probably isn't quite my area of complete expertise, but there are definitely some tools coming along in that social science and research area, which are coming from these large language models. So they're usually based around, your GPT models or other, your Google models or the ones from Meta. And we did have a talk from a health transcript company that came to talk to one of our internal workshops, which was quite interesting. So things like transcription and handling of mixed data. And I know that a lot of the research tools that people use, like Qualtrics and Vivo, are starting to introduce AI tools within the software to kind of help researchers go that next level without having to, develop their own models.
Yeah, that's right. Otter AI can be really helpful with transcription, I know, and yet I have a researcher friend who is complaining about how racist it is, and she has to do a lot more work simply because it hasn't understood the.
Yeah, I think inherently what ends up happening with these models is the biases and imbalanceness of the data. So, as we know, these models are pretty much trained on the entire internet, and the entire internet has stereotypes, potentially, biases towards different parts of the population. And that inherently means that the output from these models have that bias in them. So that's kind of, I guess, once you start learning to develop your own models, it's that garbage in, garbage out approach of making sure you've got a balanced data set to train a balanced model.
Yeah. Thanks, Glenn. That's
No
awesome.
worries, Les.
Okay, let's move right along to Daria, and from the Sydney Informatics Hub. I will unpin myself and will remove my own spotlight. There we go.
Thank you, Liz. So yes, I'm Daria from the Sydney Informatics Hub, which is actually a core facility of the University of Sydney. And I'd like to first of all thank the organizers for inviting me to present and talk here. And I actually want to take a step back from the presentations we've had and talk about a little bit about both the bigger picture and a little bit more about sort of what's different about training in generative AI over training that we've been doing for years. So as some of you may know, I've been working in the digital skills space for a long time and a number of years. And as you may or may not expect, we've moved into AI training sort of extensively this year. And I want to talk a little bit more about the fact that AI adoption and getting researchers to use AI is actually a lot more than just the training per se. Next slide, please. And I've tried to show the journey that I think getting research, of supporting the adoption of AI for research actually involves. So first of all, there is the idea of awareness, and awareness for me involves, all of us are aware about AI now. It's in the news, it's here, there, everywhere. You hear horror stories, you hear happy stories. It's pretty difficult for a researcher coming into a workshop to have not heard about AI. And also, most of them will not necessarily know how to use AI safely versus not safely. They will have quite a lot of questions around that. This is, again, very different to sort of our Python or our machine learning training, where like you don't have, there's Python, but you don't really have this sort of set of ideas and experiences coming into a training. Next slide, please. The second one is, as was discussed in the chat a little bit, AI is extensively used in the higher education sector for teaching. And because a lot of our researchers are also academics that are involved in teaching, they will have had some interaction or experience with using AI for teaching. At the University of Sydney, this has been led by the Educational Innovation Team. And we have a platform called Cogniti where educators can safely build education supporting bots and interactions and frameworks using the latest models, but in a safe and university supported controlled environment for teaching. And a lot of our researchers will have a lot of their first experiences of trying to use AI for good with this teaching and have questions of, I can do this for teaching, can I do it for research? And suddenly you realize that, oh, actually, no, some of the things that are safe to do with their undergraduate students is not acceptable or applicable for research. So next slide, please. There is, of course, training for research. And the really interesting one for this is the aspect that, unlike other areas, we're really not the only people who provide training in AI, even at the University of Sydney, not to mention nationally, which means that we are having to make sure that when we talk, we educate, we acknowledge the other trainers that may say different things and have to explain, why we say things one way and they say things another, and work together to build this shared culture of understanding. And again, for us, this is our AI Fluency Sprint, which is something out of our business school that's in partnership with PwC and other consultancies. So very leadership and business focused training. And then, as many of you will have accessible to you as well, the Australian Biocommons training, where they're talking, yes, about AI and machine learning, but very much in the specific life sciences and biology domains. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to steal Angus's thunder. So this is Angus Fisk, who's our data science and AI trainer. And these are the courses that we've run this year and are delivering. We'll talk more about what specifically they feature in at eResearch for those of you that are able to make it. But really, as you will see, it's pretty similar to the offerings that have been discussed before. So again, using it for research, prompting, reading, writing, and tools. Yes, it is missing a magnificent mustache. Aiden, next slide, please. Thank you. Then there's also the tooling, right? When you're teaching people for machine learning or data science, here's your Jupyter notebook, here's your Python, run it on your machine, off you go. For AI, we actually have to think about what people are able to run on what infrastructure they have. We have to give them access and explain what local models are. They may not have computers powerful enough. It may or may not work on, highly protected data. Oh my God, it's a lot more overhead to get started and working than it is for sort of our traditional tools. And of course, we have a university-provided Copilot instance, which is safe for most business cases, but not as powerful or useful for research. Next slide, please. And this is suddenly where we get into the platform space as well, where we quickly have to push many people to either a national computing infrastructure like NCI and POSI, cloud providers like Ronin, that interfaces with many of them, Google, Azure, and finally setting up our own internal GPU infrastructure to help have infrastructure that people can easily interact with that's cost effective. Next slide, please. We have to create guides, and some of the questions that were asked here were around, how do we, like ethics and things like that. And we actually got together with a group of HDRs and started talking with them about, if we were going to write how-to guides for how to do stuff, what would you want to do? And ethics and actually using it safely and effectively for becoming a better learner and PhD student, researcher, without undermining critical analysis and research skills was one of the core topics that they identified. So creating these with our community to make sure that we actually show them, we don't just say you can't do blah using ChatGPT. Or you can't use Fathom, you can't use Otter. Life is hard. We actually show them safer and better ways of doing it with the infrastructure and tools they have available. And finally, next slide, please. It's really about building a community of practice within the institution of researchers doing this together, whether that's by holding in these hackathons, whether it's offering consults, whether there's, again, other units run sessions on how to use the University Protected Copilot, having an online forum through, again, our University Viva Engage, hack AI, so really supporting that post hoc, post training. And only this is sort of, yes, I think, yeah, we can go to the last slide. This is all we've had to do to actually really beyond training. Like I should and I think as trainers, this is really a space where, yes, delivering the training is important, but unless we have all these other pieces as incorporated somehow for our learners as well, it's going to be a really challenging for them to adopt these tools in a way that it's not the case for a lot of the classical digital skills training that we've had. And I also want to acknowledge that lessons we've had to learn is that, first of all, we have people, we have policies and guardrails, and we want to make sure that like we're not the guardrails police. We're the people trying to show how to, but there's a lot of gentle conversations there and a lot of curiosity. There's also a lot of fear in the space about this replacing skills, replacing jobs, or this is going to take too much time to make an AI bot. You're using it instead of actually doing the real work. And people may either, dive into AI fully or actually just, I don't want to go near it. And we have people who don't want to use it at all or want to use it very limited in different ways. And acknowledging that and respecting that and helping them still achieve the research outcomes they need in a space where AI use is essential to get ahead in some fields, while also recognizing, there are reasons not to do this. Again, the environmental impacts, the fairness, and the societal impacts. All of these are really, really critical in a way that I think it hasn't been as dramatic for areas that we've taught in before. And I think, yeah, for us, it's been really a journey around learning together. So we are learning with our researchers. Every time we go out and teach, we learn something new as well and consider something new. Connecting researchers amongst themselves to really help them move forward, and yeah, avoiding the hype, because there's a lot of hype in this space. And yeah, we don't want to play that game. That's it for me. Thank you. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Daria. That was also equally a whirlwind tour. So thank you for getting all of that in, but I kind of expected it would be high energy and intensity too. So thank you. My first question for you is actually what have you learned about how best to support trainers in this space here? So in terms of supporting Angus and your other trainers at Sydney Informatics Hub, what's working and what should the trainers here be looking at in terms of their own kind of professional development, or maybe sometimes it's keeping your head above water, right?
Look, I do want to give a massive shout out to my team, like most of whom are on this call, and to Eden Zhang, who's another member of my team who makes my slides look like we know what we're doing. But honestly, I think I'm not like I'm not sure I'm the best one to point. It's almost safer to ask them. But I think the difference is we have specifically, it's a couple of things. One is acknowledging that we are one step ahead, if not at par with some of our researchers, which means it's okay when we say, I don't know. It's okay when we're like, that was a tricky one. And having a safe space to debrief around, difficult questions, researchers who will challenge you and go, you're evil for trying to teach me to use AI because AI is evil and it will take my job, right? Like you don't have that kind of, you don't have that level of emotion when you're teaching Python, right? So that's, I think, making sure that we have a space to get support for that is one aspect. The other one is making sure we budget enough. Like I lead a team now. I manage people's time. Making sure we leave enough time for people that every time they're teaching, they have time that is recognized and respected for updating the materials. Because unlike things that we've taught before, every time we deliver there is something new that we have to change, whether that is a policy, whether that is a tool, whether that is a model, and this makes it difficult to you can't just do the same thing over again. You can't say, you've developed it and that's it, it's done. It has to get updated all the time, and making sure trainers have the space and the capacity to do that. And finally, having support. So the other thing that I've had to do institutionally is I'm the one who goes and I was the one who went on the limb to actually talk about how we do stuff within our guardrails. Because the really scary conversation the first time we ran this was we had a bunch of people from like ethics and data management and IT and maybe the library going, can we sit down your trainings to make sure we're happy with how you're covering this? And I'm like, cool. Then I was like, you know what? For the tricky bits, I'm happy to take that one first, the first time. So that if, somebody says something wrong, it's me. And then, it's a bit less scary. And then having done it a few times, we've realized, okay, the way we're saying this is okay. No, it's not causing, again, challenges and conflicts because and taking a lot of that on myself as a manager so that the team can do the stuff they're amazing at, which is actually, explaining the stuff from first principles and useful things, right? Whereas I'm the one who's, says, we can't do this. Let's figure out a way if we can do that. Or, it's okay. Texa, like, for the PhD student thing, then the question of people getting your thesis written, we've actually had really encouraging interactions with HDRs where HDRs themselves don't want the AI to write their thesis because they realize that, okay, sure, you can write my thesis for me, great. It's going to be shoddy, but also okay, I've written my thesis, I've submitted, now I have to be a postdoc. I have to know how to write. I have to know how to think. I have to know how to get grants. So they understand that it's shortchanging them if they try to use these tools to just sort of replace themselves. So I think yeah, but being on top of those policies and sort of the all the areas around it, that's another area of support for trainers.
Yeah. Thanks, Daria. Okay, I'm going to bring on board our other panelists, Kyle and Glenn. There we go. Welcome. So we have a few minutes for some generic kind of panel kind of questions. And my first one, we may only have time for a small number, is a question around the curriculum. So how are we seeing that curriculum changing in terms of teaching generative AI and machine learning to researchers? So while we're looking at different modes, the modes are changing. So we've got Glenn showing the bootcamp business, Kyle differentiated audiences for your workshops, and Daria your consultation business, plus the whole range of community initiatives that you're engaging with. What is it about the curriculum that is developing that you're noticing?
Sorry, there was chats around countries. I suspect that's pretty common research development. Have they changed much of their? I heard there's meetings around putting AI in there, but I don't know basically. So I think that's one thing, but I don't know. Good question.
I mean, I'm happy to take that one because I am based at the University of Sydney, which means I have some interface to students. So in terms of curriculum per se, so undergraduate, it is changing in that it's almost assumed that AI is used everywhere where it's not banned, which is, again, I shared a link in the chat when someone asked about lane 1, lane 2 assessments. So the assumption at the University of Sydney is undergraduates are using AI throughout. They can if they want to. They don't have to. There are some courses where they do, but most parts up to you. And then there's specific assessments, which are basically closed book in classroom in person, which are the ones that count more towards your final grade and allow us to retain our sort of degree
Oh,
granting.
yes. Sorry, I think my question was misleading. When I mean curriculum, I mean the curriculum of training material, like training that you are all engaged in now. So not university curriculum across the board, but more in terms of the curriculum of training, AI, generative AI and machine learning training.
So I think what I'll start because again I'm unmuted and then pass over. But really, I think with so other things, it's still incredibly effective to learn how to do things the old way because the way you've done, the way you do machine learning, the way you learn Python, the way you learn R, the way you learn statistics, it hasn't changed with the advent of AI. So the core foundations, it's actually even more important to explain them to people from foundation to like that basic understanding. The way that AI impacts on this is it is another tool you can use to get help and to further your learning on your own. And this is where you can show, okay, we used to show just Stack Overflow for some stuff. Now you show, here's how you do Stack Overflow, and here's how, how you get Python to, you get AI to help you explain this Python function. That's, I think, where AI fits into this page. But even then, I think like looking at some of the extremes of, vibe coding and the insanity that's happening there, actually, if anything, the first principles are more important, like the basic training that we've always been doing.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I like to think about with AI is you probably shouldn't use it for something you don't already know how to do, if that makes sense. So I was talking to a paramedic the other day, and I'm probably not going to use AI to do some paramedic work myself. That's not going to end well for anyone. Whereas the paramedic is probably not going to use AI to write a Python script, whereas I might. And so I think one of the things is to make sure if you know kind of what you're doing. So again, knowing the first principles, like Daria mentioned, of training and learning R and Python, mean that when you talk to ChatGPT and ask it to fix up your Python function or whatever it might be, you also have a fairly good understanding of what the output should be. And you're just trying to improve your productivity rather than do something you don't know how to do. And I think that's where people sometimes get in, I guess, going down the wrong path, is when they haven't learned the fundamentals and then they try and do something that they don't know how to do, i.e. me being a paramedic. And so I think that's probably one of the things. I think as far as the curriculum goes, I think all training bodies are starting to, talk, as Daria said, like we used to always go, here's Stack Overflow. So maybe we also say, here's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever other tool you might be using. And then I noticed some, Jupyter Labs now are having chatbots, or you can have your coding agent within your, Visual Studio Code and things like that with Copilot and others. So I think learning to use those tools effectively for productivity is something that should be kind of included in training. And as Kyle started to do some training on prompt engineering, so you can actually get the most out of these tools as well.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Look, we're running out of time, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to close off our discussion right there and thank our excellent speakers, invited speakers. So thank you very much, Kyle and Glenn and Daria, for sharing your thoughts and the awesome things that you're doing with our audience today. Please give them a round of applause, virtually or physically as well. And Ellen is going to put into the chat our feedback form, because that helps us stay on track with what you would like to see in the future. And especially if you have remaining questions that are popping up now because of today's discussions, please put that in there. If you would like, these sessions to go for 90 minutes, or you would like more or less of certain things, please let us know, because we read them as soon as we can. Okay, what's the next? Can I use that button? Okay, our next session on Wednesday, the 24th of September, is developing training as a non-subject expert, a situation that many trainers find themselves in. So please register for that. Thanks, Kit. That one. And what's the next button? Will be a couple of promotions that I want to flag with everyone here. Firstly, the International Data Week is out. They have a program now, and you can register and have a look at what's going on there. We also have our Digital Research Skills Summit coming up just after International Data Week on Monday, the 20th of October. So please follow that link and register. We are looking at the awesome submissions that people have sent in to build the program. If you are enthusiastic about getting involved or volunteering on the day, please let us know in the feedback form or through any other method you use to get our attention. And finally, the eResearch Australasia conference that has been mentioned by a couple of our presenters. I think they are all presenting at e-research this year. The draft program is out now, so you can have a peruse of that. And I encourage you to consider coming along to that conference as well. It's up in Brisbane. So I think that's it for us. Thanks for staying with us. Copy the chat if there were some good threads that you want to follow up on, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again, Daria, Kyle, and Glenn.